ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Edenton Town Council regularly scheduled committee meeting session tonight. And in addition, we have also scheduled a special meeting where we have several items we need to address prior to our regular next scheduled policy meeting in March. So we'll begin with the special meeting agenda, and I'm going to turn most of those items over to Anne Marie because she's been working on each one of these. The first two are related one to the other, and the C and D is related, and then we have a separate one relative to our interconnect proposed agreement that we have with the solar farm that's ready to hook up to our system here sometime soon. So if you would, Anne Marie.
Okay, Mayor.
I'll turn those items over to you.
Great. The first item on the special meeting agenda is a public hearing. And this public hearing is to solicit comments from citizens regarding the proposed installment purchase contract. And you all know that means basically a loan from a bank that we would borrow money to pay for a portion of the costs to construct the new bulkhead down at the waterfront park. We received a grant from the Division of Coastal Management in the amount of $100,000. And our original estimate, we thought the project was going to cost about $140,000. But when we got the grant, one of the requirements was that we hire an engineer to design the bid specifications. And the engineer did soil samples and determined that the depth of the pilings needed to be 45 feet deep instead of 25 feet because the soil conditions were not that great. Had to go down a lot deeper to get soils that bind, is that the word? Jennifer's experience with WAF contracting comes in handy when we're talking about construction of pilings. So that dramatically increased the cost of the project. Instead of a $140,000 project, we're looking at a $340,000 project. But we need to do this replacement. You all have seen what poor condition the existing bulkhead is in. Every time we have a bad storm, a nor'easter, I worry that the bulkhead's going to blow out and we'll have a real mess on our hands. So tonight we're asking for a public hearing to hear comment on the proposed bank loan. And Jennifer has solicited proposals from banks. We received two proposals. One was from Southern Bank and another one was from BB&T. And we're recommending, and you don't have to take action on the bank proposals tonight, but just so you're aware, we're recommending that you accept at the point after the LGC hopefully approves our application, BB&T's term of a 10-year note at 3.08%. Southern's term was for 15 years at 3.8%, and you could save almost $41,000 by going with the shorter term, which we think is prudent. So with that, Mayor, I will stop and you can declare the public hearing open and hear comments if there are any. After the public hearing, we would ask that the council adopt or consider adopting the enclosed resolution in your packet that authorizes the town to file an application with the local government commission, who will then review our plan and hopefully approve us entering into a financing agreement with the bank.
Very good. This is a formality, but I'll open the public hearing. Since there's no one from the public here, it'll be brief. So, public hearing is closed, and we can now move to the resolution authorizing the filing of an application. And the chair would entertain a motion that we do that.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to authorize or execute the resolution and send it forward. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, aye? Any opposed, no. Thank you very much. We'll send it forward.
The next item, Mayor, is the contract to abate the mold that was recently found at the airport terminal building. You all have been briefed on this saga of a project, but the town hired an environmental engineering firm to go in and assess the conditions when we were informed by the state properties office that an anonymous complaint had been filed with the state auditor's office. The state auditor sent 2 inspectors down. They inspected the building, the area where the mold complaints were back in early December, and they said they were going to be submitting reports, but for whatever reason they have not submitted reports to the state auditor's office. We ran a parallel course with our own inspectors, and they found basically 3 locations where there is mold, and it was very difficult to find. I mean, they had to climb up in practically into the rafters to.
Right, we had to remove the insulation, it was above insulation, and the old ceiling that was above the suspended ceiling.
Wow.
So we're really pleased that the inspector found the source, found the problem, and then Bud worked with 2 contractors who specialize in removing or remediating mold to give us a proposal to perform that work. And in your packet, you had a copy of both proposals, and we're recommending you authorize Remtech to do that work. And you note that Remtech actually is a little bit more expensive than the other contractor, but when we factor in that hopefully as we work through things with insurance and FEMA, Remtech's proposal to do repairs here in this very room where there's been water damage from Hurricane Matthew, also in the tourism office and in the Arts Council, and as well as Town Hall, that when you factor in those proposals that both contractors quoted on, Remtech is the least of the costs, the lowest cost, I guess is the way to say it. So. And Bud and the fire chief have been terrific in helping us stay on track with all the inspectors and contractors, and they can answer any technical questions that you may have.
Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to enter into a contract as recommended by our staff with Remtech.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions, any discussions, or questions of the staff as?
Bud, are you and the fire chief satisfied that there was actually mold up in there? And the reason I asked that question, if the state inspectors didn't find it, and then another outfit does find it out, that's the only question I have.
Sure. Both inspections were thorough. One was minutely thorough to the point of crawling in the rafters, getting in the attic, and going above, as Bud said, basically 2 ceilings. The state inspectors lifted the panels and lifted the insulation to look, but didn't actually go above the ceiling. The contractor that we hired actually got above the ceiling, crawled above the ceiling, went through the elevator shafts, went underneath the building, and went to make sure that the building was inspected from end to end. So yes, there is evidence. They did provide photo evidence that there was mold there, not large portions of it, but there is photo evidence that they supplied to us. So yes, there is unfortunately a contaminated
If you're satisfied,
little
I'm
portion.
satisfied.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
If they went through all this difficult to find this mold, who reported that it was mold in there? Because I thought it was mold where you could, where you could just could see.
Well, that's a good question,
It is a
because
good question.
early on, there, we had roof leaks.
Mm-hmm.
One leak was actually occurred because DOT had a piece of equipment on the roof, and it leaked. We were able to get a contractor to repair that. Then there were several air conditioning units on the roof where flashing
The flashing.
lifted up. So when the water came into the building, it took a while, it took a while to trace where the leak was, and the ceiling tile got wet, and so there was evidence of mold on the ceiling tile. So
Oh,
that's,
okay.
that's what generated the, what we think generated the calls to the state auditor's office.
And then after we got the leaks fixed, got that contained, we replaced the ceiling tiles. So when the state inspector showed up, the ceiling tiles had been replaced. So they lifted up and visually looked, but they didn't physically climb above. Where the contractor that we hired to make sure that the building was completely safe went the extra mile and climbed above and gave us photo documentation all the way through.
Okay, thank you.
Just as a general comment, and I think you would agree, if you don't attack mold quickly and thoroughly in finding where it is and where it's going, it just accelerates. And I could understand possibly the walls being cleaned, but if you have a mold condition, it's going to come right back. You have to kill it.
And you saw that in the proposal, it is to remove the material.
That's,
It's to go above the ceiling and to remove the material that it's on so that we won't have this problem again as long as we don't have another leak. If we have another leak, we potentially could have another problem, but
or just humidity problem.
we've, in that proposal, it is to remove all of the affected areas.
So that's to say then that what allowed the leaks to occur in the first place is all been fixed, the flashings.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. We feel confident that the leaks are fixed. What it was, we replaced 2 air conditioning units about last March or April, and the flashing around 2 of them had a gap in it, about like that. And when the water was running down, it was running down the gap in there, then running down the ductwork, it run in the building. And that was hard to find. And we hired a roofing contractor, and we went out there and we found it and fixed that. And the other area that was in the original room that the complaint was made in was a tripod on the roof that rusted out. And water was running in the pipes, then running down, and you couldn't see it. Well, we investigated and found it, and I got a roofing contractor to go up there and put rubber around it and fix that. We feel confident. Right now, it hadn't leaked since the summertime.
It didn't leak during Matthew, right?
No, it did not leak during Matthew.
Wow.
So we feel confident that we got the leak.
Yeah.
Obviously, with
It's
roof leaks,
better
it
than
happens
most
again.
everything.
And the reason we know that is because, obviously, I go out there a lot and look at it, but all ceiling tiles were replaced, and none of them are staying again, and the walls are not water run down like it was. So, as of right now, we feel very confident that the leaks have been fixed.
And the RimTech contract that you've just voted on also includes the HVAC system, getting it cleaned as well. So anywhere that there's the potential of mold growth, we've addressed. From removing the material that it's on, taking the ductwork and cleaning the ductwork out and making sure that it's sanitary and clean, we've gone the extra mile to make sure that the building's taken care of.
Thank you, Chief and Bud.
Don't you love flat roofs?
I love flat roofs. I've been dealing with it a long time.
Yeah, we had one on top of our store. There was a leak in there when we left. We never did
How
find it.
could you find it? I know it.
I've had
Never did.
my dad's building, never could, I mean, it's
I
frustrating.
kept a piece of plastic beside my desk in the store, so whenever the rain was forecast, I'd unfold it and lay it over like that.
And the thing is, it can run different directions.
Yeah,
Same leak can
exactly.
go here one day and go there another day.
Yeah,
Depending on the
right.
wind.
All right. Any further questions from the staff? All in favor of executing the contract, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no? Thank you very much. And with that, we need a budget amendment.
We do, Mayor. In order to pay for the contract, Jennifer, our finance officer, has prepared a budget amendment, and we propose to appropriate $30,000 from the general fund reserve to the airport fund. And then you can see where the airport fund receives as income the transfer, and then the actual repairs will be expensed out when we pay the contractor. But this is basically an inter-fund loan with the understanding that when the town, or when the airport receives payment for the back rent that is owed and that the state properties office has indicated will be paid, that those funds, $30,000 would be repaid to the general fund. And Jennifer advised me that when that happens, we'll have to prepare another budget amendment transferring the money back. So, did I miss anything?
Okay, Chair would entertain a motion to approve the budget amendment as recommended to pay for the mold abatement.
I so moved.
Second.
Okay, further questions, comments? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, no?
Emery, just as a side note on that, where do we stand so far as getting our money from the state?
Good question. And the airport commission has been working with us, trying to make sure we stay on task. And we really feel that getting this contract underway will be, once that happens, we'll be able to resume meaningful, hopefully final negotiations with the state. We have to show them that we have abated the problem that generated the anonymous complaint. So,
Was that, I didn't understand that that was the holdup. Was that,
that we were real close to trying to finalize it, and then when the anonymous complaint came, they put the state properties office put everything on hold.
okay.
All right, and finally, for the special meeting agenda, the interconnection agreement with Edenton Solar. Looks like it's ready for execution. Glenn, Emery, or do we need to talk any further about it?
Well, Mayor, Councilman Quinn, and I should have been more clear on the agenda, but this item had been on
I
the
understand.
Utilities Committee, and we tabled it. But if you'd like, I can try to
Well, I would
summarize
appreciate that.
the negotiations that took place. At the last committee meeting, you all noted that Brock Mitchell, the attorney that works with Hood Ellis, our town attorney, had reviewed the agreement, and he identified 12 proposed changes, or had 12 comments, 12 suggestions of wording that needed to be changed. We forwarded those comments on to the solar company, and their in-house legal counsel reviewed all of those and accepted 10 out of 12 of the recommended changes. And he had two concerns, or two items that he felt like the language needed to stay the same. One had to do with material change. Brock wanted to have in the agreement that if there was any change instead of a material change during construction, that we had to be notified. And we explained to Brock that with this type of highly technical, complex construction with electrical components, that changes in the field during construction are likely to happen fairly frequently, and if we had to be notified for every change, it would most likely slow the project down. And Glenn and I felt comfortable with any material change, anything that was going to have a significant change to our system that we needed to be notified. So Brock said if we were fine with that, he was fine with it. And then the other concern had to do with language that would permit the town to disconnect the solar farm. We already had that provision in the contract, but Brock suggested that if there was a problem on the system and we needed to make sure that the solar farm fixed that problem, that they fix that problem within 30 days. And again, dealing with complex electrical processes, and then throwing in the fact that a change could involve Duke and Dominion, and the power agency that 30 days was going to be very difficult to remedy. And again, we reminded Brock that we have the provision that in the event of emergency, we can just shut the solar farm down, but that we were comfortable with a 60-day requirement to remedy a non-emergency type of problem. And Brock was fine with that. So we have reached agreement on this 60-some page agreement. And also at the last meeting, Councilman Biggs asked about covering or having the solar farm pay for Glenn's time that he's devoted to the project. And when we first started negotiating, you all made it very clear that you wanted our legal fees covered, which the solar farm people agreed to do, and they have been paying. We calculated Glenn's time that he spent on the project, and we presented that to the solar farm, and they said, you know, at this late date and the last hours of negotiations to ask us to pay for this that we didn't know we were going to have to pay for, they said we can't do that. But in the spirit of cooperation and understanding, you know, that the council wanted, you know, some compensation for his time, they have offered to pay $5,000. So I think you all should accept that. It's $5,000 more than what we had anticipated, and I remind you that going forward, when the project goes online, there will be revenue coming into the town for the project.
You need a motion for that.
Yes.
I so move that we accept the interconnect agreement as it's currently written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the agreement as has been worked upon by our team, both internally and with our legal team. Any further questions or comments?
I just think it's great we got that $5,000.
Yeah.
Y'all get a high five on that one.
We have to ask the guy that gave his time if that's
Fine.
that's fine.
Well, you can handle that.
How immediate is a disconnect? I mean, my understanding, my only concern about this, for the most part anyway, was with that, how quickly we could separate ourselves from their system so as that it does not cause damage to ours and our base of customers. I mean, granted, we wanted to make the money that's being offered to accommodate their power, but quick.
It's instant.
Right. Okay.
There's a fiber optic connection between the solar site and relays at substation, and any problems, push button.
Done. All right. One.
And there's some automatic things built in as well.
Okay.
Exceeds
When it
something.
senses.
Right.
Gotcha. One. All right. Further questions or comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And that completes our special meeting agenda for tonight. Thank you all very much. Got some important things taken care of. Moving now to the regularly scheduled portion of tonight's gathering, our committee meeting. You will hear first from Public Works, chaired by Councilman Stanley, please, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. We have two items on our agenda tonight. The first one is the streets assessment report. If you recall, Councilman Biggs brought up at our last meeting that we needed to do something about our streets, and I think we all agreed on that. And Ms. Knighton and Steve have worked on a list here, and Steve is going to give us a report on his findings. Steve, it's all yours.
Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. I'm presenting this evening the 2017 Town of Edenton Public Works Street Assessment. And what I'd like to address first is that there'll be some terminology that's in the presentation, just so you'll be familiar with when I speak of it.
first and foremost, you hear me say a road priority. Well, road priority basically meaning I've rated it 1 through 5. 1 basically meaning we have an immediate need, immediate priority. Number 2, essentially saying it's a priority. And number 3 is basically it's not as a high priority. It's like a mid priority where it needs basically crack sealant and some minor repairs. And priority number 4, it just requires some minor maintenance. And priority number 5 are the better roads, the smoother roads, less impactful roads, with very minimal maintenance or some of them hardly any at all. And the next sequence you hear about is rideability. I rate it 1 through 5. And basically, essentially, 1 is probably your bumpiest roads. I'm sure most of us could probably relate to a few that we have in town. And 5 is the best. They'll be real smooth, no bumps. Don't have to worry about spilling your coffee or anything like that. But the ratings is 1 through 5. Just like the priorities, 1 is the most important. Rideability, 1 basically is the worst. And what I'll also, as for the terminology, is share some what we are experiencing here in town of Edenton of the failures in asphalt. And what we mostly are experiencing here in town of Edenton is that we have cracking. And there are several types of cracking. You'll have fatigue cracking, which is normally, it's caused from load-related deterioration, or sometimes you have too little thickness of asphalt is what causes your cracking, your fatigue cracking. And then you also have the longitudinal cracks, which are known as edge cracking. And that also oftentimes is a lack of support of what's underneath your surface. It could be your base course, or it could be actually your subterranean foundation that you have in that area. Then you have your longitudinal cracks, which is a third type of crack that we're experiencing here at town of Edenton. The cracks you see parallel to the center line are your longitudinal cracks. And that's normally contributed to shrinkage of asphalt layer, or it could be reflected again from your underlying layer that's underneath your surface that you're seeing is cracking. And then the last part of cracking you normally see is the transverse cracking, which is perpendicular to the center line. And that's normally caused by shrinkage of asphalt layer. And also, again, it's also reflection from the existing cracks around it. That's why it's so important when we start seeing cracks, we really need to put sealant on them. That way it doesn't progress to other issues on the roads. And another sort of failure that you'll find in asphalt is distortion. Rather quickly, you have the rutting, which are your surface depressions. Then you have your shoving, which are like your ripples. So it's like a waving effect. I'm sure you've probably seen it on some streets. It's like a wave. It's like a ripple board. And that's often caused when you have excess asphalt or too much fine aggregate. You don't have any of the bigger aggregate. You have the fine aggregates. And then you have your depressions, which we all know as our bird baths. This is normally caused from settlement or from the failure of the lower pavements. It doesn't have a good foundation. So that's what causes settlements. That's what causes the bird baths. And then our third type, most common asphalt failures we experience here in the town of Edenton is disintegration. Essentially are the potholes. And the potholes are localized deterioration due to stresses in the asphalt. And also it's caused by cracks and failed patches. Again, that's why it's so important to, when you start seeing cracking, to fix, seal the cracks. That way you can minimize and eliminate your potholes. And oftentimes too, you get potholes from a poor mixture when it was placed. Doesn't happen often, but sometimes you get it from a poor mixture. In the next slide, I've included this because in the report you'll see I've included the AC asphalt cement price, and it varies and adjusts just like oil prices does. And as you can see in the months, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see in March and April, it actually started going down, and then it started going up again in June and July. And for the longest time until December, it stayed down. So it does have its ebb and flows with the economy, and it does have a significant impact when you're resurfacing. It doesn't sound like much, but it can have a big impact on your cost. And that takes us into priority one. Our priority one streets is basically streets that priority requires attention. It's top of the list. Like I said, ones are your worst. And it's a list to be recommendation to be addressed first in importance. And some of those priority ones, the two top most priority ones that I've addressed, that I've evaluated, is Trinity Avenue and West Carteret Street. As you can read there, hope you can read it, they have cracking holes, you have the depressions, potholes, and you have a lot of alligator cracking, which is, and the rideability on these two roads is poor. I mean, it's very bumpy. It's not a smooth ride at all. And you also have a lot of structural compromise in the asphalt that needs to be repaired. And what I included are some samples to show you what I'm sure you've seen, most of you've seen on Trinity Avenue, where you've got the perpendicular cracking, you've got the parallel cracking. It looks like there in the center picture, perhaps I want to say that was probably an elongated pothole repair or a utility repair. And on the third picture, again, same thing, samples of the alligator cracking that you see throughout some of the streets that are priority one. Then that takes us to West Carteret Street. Again, it gives you some samples of what we're evaluating, what we're seeing. We see a lot of alligator cracking. We see a lot of pothole patching, a lot of utility patching. And on the right-hand side, you see a lot of deterioration of the pavement, how it's lifted up, as well as the center picture that shows how it's popped up, the deterioration of the asphalt. Then that takes us to a different tier of phase one, which I've identified as Badham Road, Dick Street, and Johnston Street. And Badham Road, very similar to the others you've seen. You've got the longitudinal cracks, and the parallel cracks. And on that picture on the left-hand side, you can see where some of the edging is deteriorating. A lot of that's because we don't have a firm support or a shoulder to support that edge of asphalt. It's basically standing free, so therefore that's why it's crumbling in some of the areas. So we'll need to reinforce that and take care of that as well. And Dick Street, as most of you know, it's a very high volume road. It accompanies many of the bus traffic. As you can see on one picture here on the right hand side, it shows the rear end of one of the buses. There's heavy volume of buses, heavy vehicle traffic, which is a contributor to the alligator cracking, to some of the depressions you see, and some beginnings of some potholes, and also the deterioration along the right-hand side of the road. And that takes us to Johnson Street. Johnson Street's very similar to all the other roads of the priority one. You have your utility patch perpendicular to the road there on the right-hand picture. You got some alligator cracking, longitudinal cracking, transverse cracking. The alligator cracking are the most problematic because that's where you start getting your potholes. And the asphalt will start drying out, start deteriorating. So the alligator crackings are really are the big concerns on most of these roads. And that takes me also to another level tier of phase one, which I've addressed Luke Street, Mark Drive, Oakdale Drive, and Stratford Road as of importance that requires immediate attention. And Luke Street, as most of us know, also is High Volume Road, which serves the regional hospital area. It has many issues. It has every one of the failures that I've mentioned. It has longitudinal cracks, lateral cracks, potholes, utility patching, deterioration along the edge. It's got every one of all the above failures on Luke Street. And that takes us to Oakdale. Oakdale, again, is very similar to the other priority ones. You have the alligator cracking, you've got some pothole patching, and there where the water is standing, that's where the asphalt actually has given away. Basically, it's popped up, deteriorated. The shoulder basically is given away. They're the edge of the asphalt, and that's why we have water standing there. So that also have to be addressed along with the road, which would be rather easily. Then that takes us also to another tier of priority one, which addresses the West Hicks Street, particularly from Mark to Luke, and then from Granville to Broad Street is the West Hicks area. And then we address 3rd Street and East Carteret Street. And some of the pictures here are of West Hicks. And you can see on the right-hand side picture where the shoulder of the road where the edge of the asphalt has deteriorated because there's no strength, no shoulder, give it support. And also you have the alligator cracking on the right-hand side, which is the transverse cracking. And then you've got the longitudinal cracks as you look further down the road. So it possesses most of the asphalt failures as well. And this takes me to the final tier of priority one streets, which is the Woodward Street, the Hawthorne Road, and Jackson Street. Then that transitions us to priority two. Priority two essentially is a priority requiring secondary attention of importance. As I said from the forefront, two is a priority. It's second, the top of the list, and recommendation to be addressed. And what I've got listed here are all of the priority twos. It's not that lengthy of a list if you consider how many roads we have in town of Edenton. It basically ranges from 2nd Street, Bond Street, and all the way down to Wood Avenue. Again, priority two is a priority. Priority one, of course, are the ones that should or needs our immediate attention. Then that takes us to priority three. Basically, the description of priority three is priority requiring middle from the top priority to low priority. The third from the top in the list recommendation to require attention. That's when priority three is when you start thinking about maintenance. You start looking at maintenance, what you can do to do some preventive measures from these asphalt failures, is where priority threes need to start. Then that transitions us into priority four. This is the second of the best of the roads we have because we have priority 4 and 5 remaining. Priority 4 basically is a minor maintenance that is required. That's recommended for the repairs to help with the longevity and the usefulness of the life of the asphalt. And then priority 5 is where we do minimal maintenance. Again, trying to maintain it, trying to give the longevity of the asphalt, trying to extend the usefulness of the life of the asphalt. And what I included here after the priority 5 slide is to give you a perspective, basically a guide or a template, if that's what you want to call it, where most of the priority ones are. Most of the priority ones, as you can see, are northeast of Edenton, central of Edenton, and southeast of Edenton.
Stephen, that includes priority 1 and 2, that map.
That's correct. I'm sorry. You're correct. That is priority 1 and 2. That's correct. So it gives you a graphic representation of where the immediate needs are, put things in perspective. And further to help you put things in perspective too, priority ones are only 14% of all the roads in the town of Edenton. Priority twos is only 10%. And priority 3 is 25%, 4 is 29, and 5 is 22. Pretty close, being relatively equal from 3 down to 5. But 1 and 2 is really a small percentage of overall roads that we have in the town of Edenton. Nonetheless, that's still almost 25% of 4 that needs priorities, needs attention. And that concludes my presentation. I want to thank you for your attention and your support during this presentation. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to help them, answer them for you. If not, I'll get the answer for you.
I just got a comment. I think that was a fantastic presentation. I mean, you really laid out what we needed to know, and thank you for doing that. I mean, that took a lot of work, but that was great.
Thank you.
Do you want to hear how we're going to pay for it?
Did you have a figure, I didn't see it.
On the last column.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I couldn't read it.
Million.
What's the total cost?
Excuse me.
We estimate that priority 1 it's about $528,000
For priority
for
one,
priority 1.
25% about.
And
Well,
then
that's, no, I'm talking about 1 and 2.
1 and 2 is, yeah. And then priority 2 was about 418,000,
So
It's $1 million.
$1 million.
$1 million for the twos, worse.
So
So how are we gonna pay for it?
how are we gonna pay for it? Well, we're still looking at a scenario of how much can we afford to do an installment contract, because that is allowed by the LGC, borrow a large sum of money and then use revenue that comes in every year into your power bill, your street overlay fund to pay that debt service. But you don't want to just be paying debt service and then not have any money to do the maintenance repairs that are required to do sidewalk work and this and that. So we're gonna still look at, we're gonna try and do some forecasting out, 3, 4, 5 years. But where I'm leaning, what I'm leaning towards is if we could come up with a plan where we could borrow about $700,000 for either 7 years or 10 years. If you do it for 10 years, your annual payment is $85,000 a year. And that is a little bit less than what we project we'll be taking in each year for the vehicle tag fee. And then you would still have your power bill revenue money coming from the state to help you pay for ongoing maintenance.
Approximately how much do we get from the power bill?
We get about $140,000 a year from power bill. But not all of that. I mean, there is a salary position in there that maintains the street, so we would have to do some analysis for you. And you may need to look at, we haven't done this, but we talked about it one time, if you wanted to look at raising a penny in the tax rate is about, $40,000. So then that could be money that would be earmarked for streets. But
Don't you also have the flexibility of raising the fee? I mean, the legislature, my understanding is they gave you the authority to raise the,
and we went to the max this year. So
Okay.
So that's
that's
great,
in
that
this-
revenue's in that.
that's in this cap, okay,
Yeah.
good.
So I guess looking at what Stephen has presented in terms of needs, and then where we are with revenue and options, I think within the next, hopefully within the next month, certainly with budget, we can put together a plan for you to consider. My goal would be for us to be able to have financing approved and to piggyback on a contract with DOT because we could get a competitive price. You know, the more asphalt work that's out there, the better the price is. But our goal would be to have that for the fall, so that this fall, Twitty Avenue, Carteret, Luke Street, you know, those, the number one priorities, and then maybe about half of the number two priorities would be paved. And then we would work on prioritizing the remaining number twos and having a plan to be able to pay for those out of your operational budget going forward.
That'd be great.
But we've still got, in some of the roads that in this situation became priority 5, in other words, they're near perfect according to the concept here, or really still have potholes and still have bump spots or whatever, alligator and stuff. Even in the best, some of our roads that are by the priorities that you were doing them are the most traveled roads. And more, for different reasons, I worry about them, one, getting worse, two, the significance of them to people who do come here and consider us as a home spot. I'm not suggesting ignore the priorities. I think you did a beautiful job with that. But I'm throwing this out, that we have to consider doing the best we can to make what we've got that are the heavily traveled roads and most significant roads.
But still, you will want to repair those roads that are in, like Twitty Avenue, and those roads that are in worse shape.
Oh, I'm not talking about dropping that.
Okay.
But I'm looking for, I don't know that, it may be that 700,000 is the right amount, but what I'm trying to say is I don't want to ignore these other roads in the short term. I don't.
Absolutely, and that's why we want to spend a little time now doing some long-range planning, you know, forecast out 3, 4, 5, 6 years and see where will our priority 3s and 4s be then. Because you're right, you don't want to end up back where we are. You know, this is, the town has never done something like this before, and this would be a way to make some gains.
Well, I know this isn't perhaps the time to even begin this discussion, but I think our population, the citizens of the town, would be more amenable to a tax that is something that's going to be readily, apparently, an improvement to the entire city and adding to our town. I mean, there are times when you have to look at things in that manner.
Well, here's the thing, we got to start somewhere. And I think that what has been suggested here, and as Sambo said, this was a great presentation, and we've got to start somewhere, and I think this is a good place to start.
I'm not denying that.
Yeah, so, I mean, as I said the other night, we can't do it all at one time. We can't raise taxes enough to do this. There's no question about that.
It's not as bad as I thought it was either. I thought it was gonna be more.
I did too,
You
quite
know,
honestly,
so-
I did. Yeah.
Well, also, with respect to the funding of this, I mentioned to Anne Marie several months ago, a friend of mine over at the League Municipalities Board of Directors, he's in his community, he said they just got tired of not being able to fix the streets. And with money rates being what they were, they actually did a bond. And so they have now solved their financial needs to keep their roads in good working shape going forward. And I think it's very prudent on our part to go after a lump sum like this at this time, considering the rates that we'll be able to get the money for, and going ahead and incorporate that in with Stephen's program that he has prepared. I like the fact that the priorities in one and two will be addressed as they need to be, but equally as important was you start with number 3 now and project when 3s will turn into 2s and 1s and so forth, and prepare yourself not in a reactionary sort of way. You have to react now because we don't have a sustainable financial set aside for this cost in our ongoing budget. And combination tax, I think that's a saleable item too. When it's
Well, we have to also, all financialists and the projections are that we're going to be looking at higher interest rates.
correct.
And I really believe that. These higher interest rates could become catastrophic to us when we're trying to borrow a large sum.
Yeah.
Large sum for us.
Well, it's the same rationale the state used a year ago when they proposed the transportation bond for the voters.
And I think a bond is a,
Low cost, not lock it down for 30 years and forget about it.
yeah.
And if I can, I just want to point out one thing that we often forget. It's not just the town of Edenton residents and taxpayers that travel our roads.
That's right.
And we have a daytime population. Chief, do you know what our daytime population is? It 12,000 or? I remember hearing that one time. When you figure about all the people that come to our community to work, to do business, and our 5,000 people, our 2,400 taxpayers are responsible for maintaining the roads that are enjoyed and used by, a much larger population. So I just want to put that out there, and how the funding, how the state's funding, the Powell bill revenue that we get, that's all based on population.
I know.
And it's very unfair, but life's not fair, we know that.
Okay, so you gonna come forward with some sort of fact? I'm sorry.
Well, I think it's a combination of things that we need to look at. And stick our neck out. I mean, it's what we have to do.
But this is great planning. This is exactly what we need to be doing. I mean, once again, great report.
So, excuse me, so what action do we need to take at this point?
I would,
Just give you permission to,
direct us to continue and, come back to you at the March committee meeting with a plan of action.
so directed.
Great job.
Okay, anybody else have anything to add to that or anything? So, all right, the next thing we have is a resolution for the destination downtown request for Boogie on the Broad like we have every year, and I think Anne Marie has a presentation for that as well.
Jennifer Harris could not be with us tonight, but she did prepare a presentation. The DDE signature event is Boogie on Broad. This year they'll be bringing the Embers back to town. Look forward to that. Woohoo, dancing in the streets. And last year you gave DDE permission to utilize an area of Broad Street from Queen Street to Eden Street. And that would be the location of what we call as the beer garden, beer and wine garden. The state statutes give local governments, give town councils the authority to allow for beer and wine to be served on public streets under certain conditions for special events. And so the resolution that you have stipulates the requirements that you would hold DDE accountable to. That they have to clearly rope off the boundary area. It has to be a defined area of where the beer garden will be located. Heavy police presence with, which Chief is, and his officers work that event. They're very visible. That DDE acquire all of their appropriate permits from ALE. That they staff it with volunteers. Not only will their board members volunteer and monitor, but they also have a group of volunteers who support DDE special events. And then Chief has in the past provided volunteers through the graduates of our Citizens Police Academy. And we locate people at strategic locations around the perimeter and make sure that people aren't walking under the ropes or walking off carrying a beer in an area that is not allowed. And Chief, we did not have any. Do we have any problems? We did not. DDE markets this as a family fun event. So with that, I think that was it. I'll turn off the PowerPoint and you all can decide if you're going to recommend approval.
It has been well attended and well enjoyed by everyone that I've seen. I know my grandkids enjoy it. So, does anyone have any comments on this, for or against?
Except that I think it's something we should support.
Absolutely, I agree. So do we need to have a motion on that, Anne Marie, or just? To
recommend to the council, we'll put the resolution on the agenda
okay.
for the March meeting.
Okay, then let's send it forward to full council then. And Mayor, that's all we have.
Thank you, sir. Next, Finance Committee will meet, chaired by Councilman Dixon, please, sir.
Let's see, we have two things on. First is the Hurricane Matthew project ordinance. Emery, you want to?
I'm actually going to ask Jennifer to present that. She's been working really hard with all the department heads and with FEMA and our insurance agents on this project. So.
Good evening, Mayor and ladies and gentlemen of the council. In your packet you have the budget, and I'll just briefly summarize the projects that we have going on. The first one is the debris removal project, and this project is actually complete and has been approved, and we're waiting for our funds now. And this project included the town's labor and equipment to haul the debris to our debris site on Hickory Fort Road. The second one is Emergency and Protective Services, and this project has been submitted and we're awaiting approval on this one. This project included three things. The first being the labor and equipment for the fire department rescues. Secondly is the town's labor and equipment to repair a washout at West Queen Street that exposed our sewer lines. And lastly is the temporary repairs for the main lift station failure. And this included the town's labor and equipment to pull one pump, and we had 2 pumps and a fuel tank rental for 3 months, and then the fuel. And both of these pumps have been repaired and have been placed back in service. The next one is the electrical distribution project, and this will include the town's labor, equipment, and material to respond to the outages that occurred during the storm. And this included replacing 2 transformers. Next is the building repairs. This project includes repairs at the fire station for damages caused by the floodwaters, and it will also include mold remediation and remodel to the damaged areas at Town Hall and this building. Next is the main lift station project, and this will include the permanent repairs of the main lift station failure. And this is the cost from 2 outside contractors that repaired the pumps and then placed them back into service. Next is the Hicks Street. This project included the cost to repair the washout on Hicks Street. The north side has been repaired by town employees, and then the south side, we are waiting on quotes from contractors to decide whether the town will do the repair or the contractor will do the repairs. And lastly is Old Hertford Road. And this will include costs for a contractor to fix the damaged culverts and repair the damaged road. This estimate includes a replacement of the same size pipe, but we are looking into possibly making the pipe larger because of repairs that will take place upstream. So we're waiting on that too. So and that's all of our projects. Any questions?
And we just might say for the record that right now it looks like our expenses total about $301,000.
Do you need anything on this? Or is this
This
You
we
want
need
us-
as a motion, to go to the
to the,
March
okay,
meeting.
so I'll put that in the form of a motion.
You can just
Second.
You just send it.
I just said, yeah, the
Just
committee
send
says,
it.
that's right.
Okay.
Good job, John.
Thank you, Jennifer.
And the second thing we have is a budget amendment from the NC Financing Agency grant. Emery, you want to?
Sure, this is a 2014 grant to the Housing Finance Agency that does housing rehabilitation. And we really like this program a lot. They award you, when you first apply, you're allowed to treat a certain number of houses. And if you're successful in completing your work, then the agency lets you reapply again. So we were successful. We treated 4 houses and we were able to reapply, and this is a grant, an amendment to the grant that allows us to treat 4 more houses. And those 4 houses have already been identified, so people cannot call Town Hall tomorrow for an application for this grant. We can talk about another grant next, but so we're asking that the committee recommend for approval the budget amendment to reflect the 4 additional units.
So we'll send that on to full council. That's it for the Finance Committee.
Thank you, sir.
That's a good program.
Yeah. And the final agenda item tonight is our administrative committee meeting, and Councilman Biggs is absent. So Anne Marie, if you would please cover those 2 items with your committee.
I will. We were delighted to have received a grant through the 2017 Housing Finance Agency, and we'll be invited to attend a workshop in June. So we can't do anything with this program until staff attends the training in June, and then hopefully in July we can kick off the program. We can solicit applications from residents, and I believe there will be about 4 units, and the cost per unit that we'll be able to treat is somewhere around, I think, $25,000 or $30,000 per unit. So we need the administrative committee to recommend approval of this grant agreement. And we're also going to target the houses in our redevelopment zone. We're going to really try to recruit applicants, homeowners, to apply for this project who are living in homes that they own in the redevelopment zone. And this project gives priority, well, it has to be home ownership, but it also gives priority to senior citizens, veterans, households with children, and also households with anybody who's disabled. So recommend that committee send that on to the council meeting.
Send it.
And then the very last thing, code amendment regarding human waste. Years ago, the town adopted an ordinance that stipulated fines and penalties if somebody were to urinate or deposit human waste in town on public property, Chief, or is it anywhere on public property? And we recently, about 2 or 3 years ago, went through a process of recodifying the code. And this happens once in a while. I've seen it with some of my colleagues in other municipalities. and I think it has happened one time here, where through that codification process, an ordinance somehow disappears from the code. We have scoured the code. Chief told me, you know, something happened, we don't have that human waste code. I'm like, yes, we do, and then I searched for it and we don't. It somehow got missed by the codification company. So we're asking for you to consider adopting this ordinance again.
I would just ask one question. Are we satisfied with the ordinance the way it's written now?
Yes.
Okay.
We need to send that one to the committee, Jim? Can we send it? Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we done.
Before you dismiss me, I
Yes.
make one comment. Yesterday on the way home from church, they had a checkpoint set up. I did check a driver's license and all, and there was an officer that I don't know, I hadn't seen him before, but he was the one that checked my driver's license, and he was very polite. He saw my driver's license and commented the fact that I'm a veteran and was very appreciative of that, and this type of thing. So your officers are doing a good job.
Thanks, sir.
Could I say something, Mayor?
Sir?
I would like to thank each and every one of you for the support that you gave me through the passing of my mother. It was very touching and dear to my heart and my family. And it's nice to know that you are on a team with such caring and loving people. We really appreciate it. Thank you all.
Oh, very well.
I have one quick thing. I just sent y'all an article. Last week I spent 2 days touring successful downtowns and very successful downtowns and very non-successful downtowns. And I just sent you an article that was written about the difference in the two communities. And if y'all have time to read it, I think it basically says we're doing a lot of things right. We can do some, there's a lot more we can do, but it was really interesting and almost, hard to believe the difference in the way communities run, provide services and fix themselves up and do community revitalization. And, I just think there's a lot to be learned from this article. I just, sent it to everybody. Sorry to make you read some.
Okay, that completes our agenda for tonight. Thank you all for your participation, and we will see you here at our March council meeting. We adjourn.
Thank you, sir.
Can we get some money to come here? Or just